Now, with all of this in mind, this affects South Carolina, of course, particularly because Clemson is their biggest rivals on the gridiron, on the hardwood, and on the baseball diamond, you name it. So, in my opinion, with Clemson, one of three things is going to happen. The first thing that could happen is Clemson and some of these other schools in the ACC, like North Carolina, Florida State, Miami, whomever, they'll hire lawyers and try to find a loophole around this grant of rights clause in their media contract with the ACC, or they could potentially try to elicit help from the SEC to help pay for this or whichever conference they end up trying to go to. Now, the latter part of this, I don't see happening at all. I don't see this happening with the SEC or even potentially the Big Ten, because the thing is, if they get help from either of those conferences paying for them basically leaving their respective conference, that also means that you're probably taking some money out of the other team's pockets. And the teams that are already a part of those conferences are not going to like that at all. So I could see maybe the first part happening, but the second part, that one is probably a complete pipe dream, honestly. Now, the second thing that could happen, Clemson could go to the Big Ten potentially due to the projected revenue title that they could still have over the SEC, and the Big Ten subsequently could get to stamp their footprint right in the heart of the Southeast in terms of a TV market and conference exposure to prospective recruits. Obviously, Georgia, Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, that is one of the more talented regions in the entire country in regards to high school football. It'd be a big deal for the Big Ten to get a chance to stamp their flag right there in that spot. And it could also give Clemson leverage in terms of maybe getting help with the grant of rights clause if they decide to go down that route. And then the third option that I see happening is Clemson rides it out in the ACC for a couple more seasons until the losses from the grant of rights clause is bearable enough for them to just eat it and leave. Now, obviously, Clemson could definitely be taking a very big risk here. This is a big thorn in their side, along with the other teams in the ACC that could be looking to leave. And realignment seems to be occurring at a lightning quick pace to where if you don't make a move and choose to sit and wait, you could very well get left behind. And that just might be a risk that Clemson is not going to want to take. So the bottom line with all of this, I could see Clemson join the SEC if they want to, and if the conference wants them badly enough, it's not going to matter what South Carolina thinks. There's not going to be any behind closed doors handshake agreement between Georgia and Florida and Kentucky to not let Clemson in. Because if the SEC wants them badly enough, they're going to expect all the institutions to tote the line. It's the same thing that happened with Texas A&M when it was agreed between Oklahoma and Texas and the SEC that they would join the conference in 2025. They could also join the Big Ten because, in my opinion, they would get more money over time, and they would have this grant of rights clause potentially be a little bit less of a bear on them if they chose to go that route, because they would have the leverage that I mentioned earlier. So getting back to how this affects South Carolina, the one thing that the Gamecocks have had over the Tigers for several years now has been their affiliation with the SEC and the revenue share that they've gotten from the conference for simply being a part of it from a media perspective and in terms of all the money that is earned through the course of the season performance that all the schools have. Now, if Clemson joins the conference, this advantage would obviously go away. But it would also mean that Clemson would now have to face the best conference in the country 8 to 9, maybe even 10 games, who knows at this point, out of the year. And I don't believe that Clemson would continue to easily win 10-plus games a season with them being in the SEC. So I do believe that there would be some give and take there between South Carolina and Clemson. I will say this, South Carolina fans, I don't think that you should be scared of Clemson joining the SEC. If anything, I think that we need to look at it as a challenge. It's what Shane Beamer's tried to do the whole time he has been here, is try to get Gamecock fans to understand that we need to be more optimistic when it comes to looking at stuff like this. And while, yes, this will affect us in some way, shape, or form, at the end of the day, what's good for the conference, more often than not, is good for South Carolina. And yes, Clemson would be a case where maybe it wouldn't be 100% good, but there are a couple positives in terms especially of finances in this deal. We just got to be able to take advantage of that at the end of the day.